Well, it's been almost 3 years since our last episode on dating, Pastor John. You briefly mentioned dating in a couple of episodes since, but no episodes devoted to the topic for a long time. Our longest drought ever for such a major theme on the podcast, which you can begin to appreciate by scanning my digest of all those many episodes in the APJ book. I titled that section on dating, romance idols, and fornication, which is pages 141 to 165. Much has been said already, but not everything. No, because you all surprise us with great questions like this one today. Can a single pastor date within his local church? Should he? And why wouldn't he? Here's the email. Pastor John, hello. I'm a 23-year-old pastoral intern and MDiv student preparing to enter full-time ministry soon, sooner than I expected. I am a single man and find it challenging to date while being on this pastoral track. First, I find many young women intimidated by the stereotypes of the pastor's wife, stewarding a meager income, maintaining a pristine public image, and ministering to the women in the church. All lofty callings. Second, due to the busy amount of work and school, I meet very few women outside of my church. Third, I hesitate to date inside my church due to my position on the pastoral team. What's your advice for someone in my situation? Is it appropriate for pastors to use dating apps? And if this is even remotely possible, how would a pastor wisely date within his own church? The closer I get to becoming a pastor, the smaller the possibility of marriage appears to me. Your wisdom and encouragement would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I'm just smiling here because I think 95% of our listeners are not in this category of being a pastor or almost pastor who would like help in finding a wife. But I'm betting 90% of them are not going to turn this off.
Exactly.
They wonder, what is Pastor John going to say?
Yep, exactly.
And so I'm wondering that too. Only I get a chance to turn this off and think about it. I'm going to focus on the young pastor himself, not just the seminary student or the apprentice. I know that's where he is, but I think what I say about, I'm just thinking about a young pastor. You know, he comes right in, maybe he's an associate or a youth pastor, or maybe he's the senior pastor at age 27 or 8, and he's single and he'd like to be married. What do I have to say to him? And I'm going to start and end with the glorious truth of God's mysterious providence. There are two mysteries of God's providence that I never cease to be amazed at. I mean, I'm amazed at all of them, but these two just blow me away. One is the mystery of how God in his providence calls people into full-time vocational Christian service in the church or on the mission field. How does that happen? This just strikes me as astonishing and glorious. 1 year, here's a person studying in school, maybe a junior or a senior, or maybe high school, or maybe serving in a trade or a profession, selling shoes, for example, like one of our missionaries did. And then 10 years later, there they are, a devoted, full-time, lifelong missionary in a distant, hard place. How in the world did that happen? What did God do to make that happen? The other mystery is how God in his providence brings a man and a woman together from who knows where, 1,000 miles apart, 10,000, in such a way that they come to know each other, trust each other, love each other so deeply, they get married and live together for 60 years. I look back on how I came to meet and fall in love with Noelle, my wife, as a totally unexpected, undeserved, inexplicable gift of providence. So that's where I'm starting. And I just want to say to young pastors, single pastors, believe that. Believe in the providence of God. He is up to something. Yes, he is, in ways you can't even see. The next thing I would say to this young pastor or aspiring pastor is that if a woman is put off by the thought of being a part of your full-time ministry, she's not the right woman. You want a woman who will not just tolerate your calling, your burden, your passion, your risks in ministry, but a woman who loves the thought of throwing her life into that with you. This is what God has been making her to be. She wants to share that kind of life, walking on the edge of eternity with all of its difficulties and risks and challenges. And you can believe, yes, you can. God is raising up many such women in our day. He's always been doing this. Women who want to find and be found by a trustworthy, strong, kind lover of God who wants to live his life radically in the service of Christ. That's what they want. She's been dreaming about this. She wants to live that kind of life herself, and she would love to do it with a like-minded husband. Believe that. Wait for that. She's out there. Third thing I would say is be realistic and mature and candid with your fellow church leaders. The older, mature, trusted fellow pastors or lay people, tell them how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're hoping, and ask them to partner with you in praying and working toward a happy outcome of finding God's woman for you. Now, if this sounds pragmatic rather than romantic, it is. Finding a compatible Christian spouse ought to be a practical community project involving family and church, not a secretive, solitary quest. We just get over that. That's not the way you need to think about it. When I say ask for their help, I mean ask them first to pray. Oh my goodness, I have prayed over the last 50 years. I have prayed specifically with many young men, especially. They're the ones who feel most free, I think, to come forward after a service and tell me, I want to be married. Would you pray with me? And I prayed with them. All the ones I can remember are married. There's no shame in this. To go to a friend or a pastor and say, pray that God would lead me to the woman that I could spend my life with. And besides prayer, I mean, ask your leaders for their counsel. Ask them to keep their eyes open in regards to their near and far networks. My wife kept her eyes open at our church for husbands, for example, for her sisters. And she introduced 3 of her sisters to the men they married at our church. And she did it very intentionally.
Wow.
This was quite intentional. Yes, it can be awkward, but it can be glorious. It can be glorious. Be a mature, confident young man. This will not be your last brush with awkwardness. So grow up, put your big boy pants on and be confident that these folks are for you and can help you in this process. Fourth thing I would say is I'm not opposed in principle to dating apps. How you go about meeting a person is not nearly as crucial as how you go about discerning that person's character. Mm-hmm. That's another challenge, and it's not going to happen on an app. But I would offer this caution. It seems to me that a pastor is a fairly public person, and the secrecy surrounding the use of dating apps could tarnish your reputation as one who wants to be totally candid with his church and especially with his leaders. Now, that's not a veto. I don't have a veto vote here against dating apps, but it is a caution. I would give preference to the open networks that you have rather than to secret ones. The fifth thing I would say is pursue various ministry ventures like short-term mission trips. You might lead them or just go on them, or mercy ministry ventures, hurricane in New Orleans, and your church packs a bus full and goes down to help put sandbags up, or rescue houses, or educational tours where the nature of the venture might be self-selecting. And in all these ministries that you go on, they might be self-selecting for the kind of woman that would go on it too. Lots of couples meet because they followed their ministry heart on some venture and discovered each other in the process. And finally, I would return to God's mysterious and wonderful providence. I have seen God lead two people together in the most unlikely ways. For example, two people at our church, both wanted to be in missions, both single, both wanted to be married, didn't know each other. They surrendered. They just said, okay, it's over. We probably won't get married. Gave themselves utterly to the mission. Both of them were sent by various missions, posted to one of the hardest places on the globe, and guess what? They discovered each other there after they had basically surrendered and said, well, didn't happen at home. It's sure not going to happen on the mission field. And that was not true. So trust God's mysterious providence. Focus on doing your ministry with all your might. Walk through the doors he puts in front of you. Pray without ceasing. And trust God's good timing.
Here's the app we need. You upload your profile. John Piper prays for you for your future marriage. And then Noel Piper matches the profiles. Tell me that would not be the hottest dating app in the Christian world.
I don't think I could do that often enough. I wouldn't have any time left over.
That's all you do. Oh, Pastor John, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. Pastor John cannot arrange your marriage, but he can answer any questions you might have about dating and marriage. Ask Pastor John. Email us at askpastorjohn@desiringgod.org. But are there any remaining questions on dating to ask? I don't know. You tell us after you look at the archive at askpastorjohn.com. And all of that I tried to summarize for you in the APJ book in that section titled On Dating, Romance Idols, and Fornication. Pages 141 to 165 in the APJ book. A one-of-kind wealth of pastoral leadership on dating here on the podcast that you're going to find in the archive. Make good use of it. I'm Tony Reinke. Pastor John and I will see you again on Monday.